He didn't realize it at first, but the silence that morning was louder than any argument he had ever lost. For the first time in his life, no one was blaming him, and that's what terrified him. Ethan Miller was a kind of man people described as solid. Not exciting, not mysterious, just dependable. At 42, he lived in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. The kind of neighborhood where lawns were trimmed every Saturday, neighbors waved politely but never asked real questions, and life moved in predictable loops. Ethan liked it that way. Predictability felt safe. He worked as a project manager for a mid-sized logistics company. He wasn't passionate about the job, but it paid the bills. Promotions had passed him by, though he always told himself it was because he valued balance more than ambition. That story helped him sleep at night. At home, his marriage looked fine from the outside. 12 years with Laura, 2 kids, one in middle school, one just starting high school. Family dinners happened often enough to count. Vacations were planned carefully and executed efficiently. But inside Ethan's mind, there was a constant low-level tension, a quiet discomfort he never named. He believed he was a good man. He believed he had done what was expected of him, and yet he often felt misunderstood, unappreciated, and strangely distant from his own life. When things went wrong, Ethan had explanations ready. If Laura seemed distant, it was because she was too emotional. If his boss overlooked him, it was office politics. If his kids didn't open up, it was because kids these days were glued to screens. None of these explanations felt like lies. They felt reasonable, logical, comfortable. Ethan avoided conflict, but not because he was peaceful. He avoided it because conflict threatened the image he had built of himself, the responsible one, the patient one, the man who always tried. What Ethan didn't realize was that avoidance is still a decision, and decisions shape lives. The turning point didn't arrive as a dramatic explosion. It arrived as an empty house. It was a Tuesday. Ethan came home earlier than usual, holding a grocery bag with Laura's favorite tea, an uncharacteristic gesture sparked by a vague sense that something was off. The house was quiet, too quiet. Laura's car was gone. So were the kids' backpacks. On the kitchen counter sat a single envelope with his name written neatly on the front. Inside was a letter, not angry, not dramatic, calm, measured, almost painfully thoughtful. Laura wrote that she and the kids were staying with her sister for a while. She wrote that no one was in danger. She wrote that she wasn't asking for a divorce yet. But one sentence stopped Ethan cold. I realized I've been lonely for years, even while standing next to you. Ethan reread that line again and again. Lonely? With him? His first reaction was disbelief, then defensiveness, then confusion. He wanted to call her immediately, to explain, to correct the misunderstanding. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the tone of the letter, or maybe it was the quiet truth pressing against his chest. Laura hadn't written in anger. She had written in clarity. That night, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table long after the sun went down. No TV, no phone, just the hum of the refrigerator and the echo of that sentence. For the first time, he didn't rush to defend himself. Instead, a question surfaced, soft, uncomfortable, unavoidable. What if she's right? The days that followed were heavy. Not dramatic, but dense. Every routine felt unfamiliar without his family in it. Ethan started noticing things he had ignored for years. How often Laura had tried to talk, only to be met with his silence or quick solutions. How often he had listened just enough to respond, but not enough to understand. How often he had chosen being right over being present. He remembered moments that suddenly felt different in hindsight. The time Laura said she felt invisible at a dinner party, and he laughed it off. The time his son tried to tell him about school stress, and Ethan dismissed it as normal stuff. The time his daughter stopped asking him for help altogether. None of these moments were cruel on their own. That's what made them dangerous. They were small, quiet, easy to excuse. Ethan realized something unsettling. His biggest mistakes weren't dramatic failures. They were daily omissions. He hadn't hurt people with harsh words. He had hurt them with absence. A week later, Ethan agreed to meet Laura at a small cafe. No arguing, no defending, just listening. And for the first time in their marriage, that's what he did. Laura spoke slowly, carefully. She talked about emotional exhaustion, about feeling like she was managing life alone while being married, about how she had stopped expressing needs because it felt pointless. Ethan felt exposed, but also strangely relieved. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't apologize right away. He admitted something harder. "I didn't know how to show up without feeling like I was failing," he said. "So I stopped showing up emotionally at all." That sentence surprised even him. It was the first honest thing he had said out loud in years. Change didn't happen overnight. That's not how real life works. Ethan didn't become a perfect husband or father. He still slipped into old habits, still wanted to explain instead of listen, still felt defensive at times. But something fundamental had shifted. He understood that intentions don't outweigh impact, that being physically present isn't the same as being emotionally available, that avoiding mistakes is often just another way of avoiding growth. Ethan started therapy, not because he was broken, but because he finally accepted that self-reflection wasn't weakness, it was responsibility. He learned that accountability doesn't begin with blame, it begins with awareness. Over time, Laura noticed a difference, not in grand gestures, but in consistency. He asked questions and waited for real answers. He stayed in uncomfortable conversations instead of escaping them. He admitted when he didn't know what to do. Slowly, trust began to rebuild. Not perfectly, but honestly. Ethan also realized something deeper, something that extended beyond his marriage. Most people don't ruin their lives in one bad decision. They drift away from the truth through 1,000 small justifications. And the hardest moment isn't being confronted by others. It's the moment you finally stop lying to yourself. Ethan still thinks about that quiet morning, the silence, the letter, the feeling of standing in a life he almost lost. He knows now that understanding your mistakes doesn't mean punishing yourself. It means choosing to see clearly, even when clarity hurts. So here's the question he wishes he had asked himself sooner. If the people closest to you feel distant, are you sure you're as present as you believe, or are you just nearby?